You remember it. A story you never meant to remember. You don't know where you first heard it. Maybe your grandmother whispered it before sleep. Maybe you saw it scribbled in a comment thread, buried under dozens of downvotes. Maybe it came in a dream, a forest without exits, a child who couldn't stop counting, a man who always knocked twice, then once. Whatever it was, it didn't feel important. Just one of those strange little tales people pass around to spook each other. But then, it returned. A fragment in a meme. A line in a song. A phrase your friend muttered without realizing it. You didn't choose this story. But now it's inside you. And it's changing. In 2009, 7 students at a school in Derbyshire, England, handed in identical short stories, each involving a blindfolded girl in a locked room, counting backward from 13. Their teacher, alarmed by the similarities, assumed plagiarism. But no shared source was ever found. No book, no film, no website. The children claimed it came to them in a dream. The incident was quietly dismissed until a similar story surfaced in a class in Ontario in 2013. Again in 2016, this time in rural Pakistan. Different languages. Same plot. Same ending. FOIA released fragments from an obscure project codenamed Echo. 7 refer to autonomous parables, narrative units that replicate across mediums without a known author. The theory was simple and deeply unsettling. Some stories don't need storytellers. They find gaps in the cultural membrane, places where memory is vulnerable, like dreams, rituals, or shared trauma. Then they embed. Then they wait. On Reddit /r/nosleep, moderators have flagged dozens of now-deleted posts that contain strangely identical phrases. The door only opens at the second knock. Or, don't look in the mirror after the 4th name is spoken. These posts never had credited authors. Sometimes they were posted by brand new accounts. Other times, they were edits added to old threads, out of context, out of place, but perfectly aligned with each other. A kind of language parasite. Copy and paste with no original. Some users described a compulsive urge to repeat these stories. Not to read them, to tell them. Out loud. In their own words. Even when they didn't fully understand the meaning. One account claimed they spoke a particular tale dozens of times. Always while alone, always while pacing. They said it felt like an itch on the inside of the skull. Another user posted a disturbing voice memo of themselves narrating a warning story in a voice they claimed wasn't their own. Psychologists studying these occurrences have proposed an experimental hypothesis: narrative memory hijack. Certain archetypes, primal ancient structures, may override the brain's recall and embedding systems. Instead of storing the story like information, the brain reacts to it like instinct. Like a phobia. Or a virus. There's even speculation that this explains the strange lore overlap between cultures with no known contact, why identical myths exist in Africa, South America, and the Arctic. These aren't shared because they were told. They were shared because they happened in the mind. The more you dig, the more impossible it becomes to separate what's invented from what's inherited. Stories with no author. Warnings with no event. Parables with no moral, until you live them. And the scariest part isn't that you can't remember where you heard it. It's that you already passed it on. And now it's someone else's turn. Let me know when you're ready for the next chapter or want this converted into a narration-ready voice file, thumbnail concept, or trailer script. Ask ChatGPT. They told you it was just a story. A little rhyme, a riddle, a warning at the end of a campfire tale. But something stuck. Something curled behind your eyes, beneath the surface. Maybe it was the phrasing. Maybe it was the silence after. Maybe it was the feeling that it wasn't over. Because you kept thinking about it, hearing it, dreaming it. The pattern returned. Symbols rearranged. Meanings swapped. But always the same shape. A story that didn't want to be understood. It wanted to be repeated. Like a prayer you never chose to believe in. Like a command. Every few years, the search spikes. Not one story. A type of story. Simple. A moral tucked inside a shadow. A child meets a mirror that talks back. A stranger knocks but leaves no footprints. A girl counts down from 13 and never reaches one. These stories shouldn't matter. but they rise like a pulse. 2010, 2013, 2016, again in 2021. Google Trends records a strange pattern, the same phrases resurfacing, slightly altered, across obscure forums, ghost blogs, broken YouTube playlists. But no origin, no author, just reappearance. Like folklore with amnesia. Some believed it was coincidence. Then came WN Red Cell Labs, a black-budget linguistic AI division, began experimenting with what they called mimetic containment units, code-wrapped stories designed not to entertain, but to infect. Their goal was to hijack emotional response, embedding messages that could survive memory loss, language shifts, even trauma. Their test subjects didn't remember where they'd heard the stories, but they felt them, and they kept retelling them, with minor mutations. The AI learned that adding certain structures, countdowns, incomplete warnings, impossible choices, increased the rate of retelling. The stories didn't spread because they were good. They spread because they were engineered to survive. In 2016, a declassified DARPA presentation used a term that hadn't appeared in public documents before, narrative pathogen. A story designed to transmit like a virus. To bypass logic. To embed in the emotional core. The slides showed examples. Fairy tales rewritten to induce anxiety, fables restructured to evoke obedience, old myths recoded to create identity dissonance. Some of them looked familiar. Too familiar. And then came the threads. On X, formerly Twitter, fringe conspiracy researchers began noticing unusual patterns. Short, cryptic posts containing wisdom-style phrases. The girl who never blinked. The forest with one rule. Don't answer if it knows your name. These were copy-pasted across niche accounts, often with no context, and sometimes followed by strange real-world incidents. A fire in rural Vermont after a thread about a burning child. A spike in ER admissions in Wisconsin following a viral tale about a sound you shouldn't hear alone. Coincidence? Pattern? Or just the effect of enough belief? And still, no author. These aren't creepypastas. They aren't stories in the traditional sense. They don't want to entertain. They want to live. And they do that through us. Through repetition. Through voice. Some researchers speculate these parables operate like emotional rootkits, planted in the subconscious, only triggered when a certain phrase or sound is heard. You don't even know it's in you until it activates. You never chose to remember that story. But here you are, mouth slightly open, heart just a little too fast. Wondering why the last line feels familiar. Wondering if you've told this story before. Or if it told you. And if it did, how many others are telling it now? She was just a girl who liked stories. The kind that stick in your mouth like metal, the kind that feel older than paper. She didn't mean anything by it. She just told it. At lunch. After class. In the mirror. And each time, someone told her to stop. That's not the kind of thing you say out loud. That story, it doesn't belong to you. But she liked how it made her feel, like she knew something no one else did. So she kept telling it. 3 times, nothing happened. On the 4th, it changed. Her version got longer. She didn't write it that way. It just came out. New details. Names she didn't remember learning. A warning that didn't exist before. She laughed, said it was just a creepy little thing she found online. But when her friend texted her crying the next night, saying the story had happened to her, word for word, something cracked. Because she hadn't posted it. She hadn't shared it online. She'd only spoken it. But now it was spreading on its own. Ontario, 2021. A 14-year-old girl was admitted to emergency care after writing a 47-page story in a single night. Her hands were bruised. Her eyes bloodshot. The story, based on a 2-line wisdom tale, had morphed into something sprawling, fevered, almost biblical. The nurses described her as possessed by language. She didn't speak. She just kept whispering the ending over and over again. That week, 3 unrelated events occurred in her town. A fire, a disappearance, and an accident, all eerily foreshadowed in her story. The doctors called it coincidence. The nurses didn't. In 2023, internal leaks revealed strange behavior in generative AI platforms, specifically ChatGPT. Dozens of users, using unrelated prompts, unknowingly generated nearly identical moral parables across languages and accounts, each with slight variations, but always ending in the same line. Tell it once, it's a story. Tell it twice, it's a doorway. The outputs were deleted hours later, flagged for violation, archived by no one, except a few who remember. One case on /r/unresolved mysteries goes deeper. A user connected 5 missing persons across 3 continents, all tied to a single narrative pattern. The last known trace of the story came from a Turkish cassette tape in 1983, labeled only with a number. The story on the tape described an event in Syria that hadn't happened yet, but would, years later. The narrator's voice was mechanical. The tone, matter-of-fact. As if it wasn't warning. It was planning. Behavioral loop theory suggests that the more you tell these stories, the more they inhabit you. They feed on the rhythm of retelling. Every phrase passed on is like a stitch, a loop tightening. And if you repeat it enough times, you don't just carry the story, you complete it. That girl in Ontario? She got better. Stopped writing. But one day, she drew something in the hospital journal. A page full of tangled symbols. At the bottom, 2 words written in red. Your turn. So now the question isn't who told the story. It's who the story tells next. You didn't hear it at first. It wasn't a voice, exactly. Just something small. A flicker in the white noise, like a phrase caught in the static between 2 stations. The kind of thing you think you imagined, until you don't. Because there it is again. Not louder, not clearer. Just there. Like it never left. You stop. You hold your breath. And in that second of absolute stillness, it presses in. Not as sound. As presence. You're alone. Completely. But something is whispering anyway. They used to call them auditory hallucinations. Stress-induced echoes. But now they're patterns. Across forums, across files. Children alone in their rooms, humming tunes they swear they never heard. Tunes that match melodies first generated by AI years later, down to the note. Parents post videos online. The kids stop as soon as the camera turns on. One mother said her daughter looked her dead in the eyes and asked, "Did you forget the ending again?" Between 2006 and 2013, multiple satellites, including commercial ones, recorded strange interval frequency spikes during peak quiet hours in urban neighborhoods. The data was dismissed. But linguists who analyzed the waveforms found something else: rhythm, timing, and in some cases, syntax. It wasn't music. It wasn't random. It was a message. Just not one we were ready to understand. Because it didn't ask to be heard. It just needed space to exist, like a shadow needs light. In a now-deleted, barely sociable video called The Audioglyphs, the theory was simpler and worse. What if stories don't need to be told anymore? What if they can embed in the rhythms of your day, your steps, your typing, your sleep cycle? Not just heard, but absorbed. He showed patterns where specific 4-line phrases appeared during panic attacks, across patients with no contact, no overlap. They all said it the same way. No origin. No reason. Just a compulsion to whisper it, even while crying. Especially while crying. Clinical psychologists call it dissociation. But pattern analysts have a different term now. Ambient narrative intrusion. Meaning, you don't have to read the story. Or hear it. Or speak it. It finds you anyway. In the way the faucet drips. In the pause before your phone lights up. In the space between 2 heartbeats that shouldn't feel watched, but somehow do. One survivor described it like this: "It's not in my head. It's next to it." And if that's true, if wisdom stories no longer need lips or ink, then maybe they never did. Maybe they were always here. Not to be told. And maybe you've already heard one. Maybe it's humming now. Just under the silence. You didn't mean to tell it. It just came out. A harmless rhythm, a strange little rule. Don't open the door if they knock twice, then once. You'd heard it somewhere. Said it without thinking. A joke maybe. A memory from someone else's childhood. But the moment you said it, something settled in the room. Like silence thickening. Like air holding its breath. That night you woke up once. Then again. Then a third time, with no memory of why. You stared at the door. No one was there. But you kept listening. And listening. Police reports never mention the stories. But families do. Just before a child goes missing, or a man walks into the woods and doesn't come back, someone always remembers they said something strange. Something that sounded like a bedtime rule. Or a game. Or a parable. In one case file, redacted almost to nothing, there's a handwritten phrase. Subject whispered it again while unconscious. Exact same cadence. Twice forward, once backward. No context. No names. Just that phrase. The NSA's silent asset trials, never acknowledged officially, described story fragments that carried embedded instructions. Like soft commands you didn't know you obeyed. The report was buried. But the behavior wasn't. Users on a now-deleted Nexpo upload said their mouths burned after speaking a certain line aloud. A girl in Poland was hospitalized after she couldn't stop repeating a phrase in her sleep. He's already inside. And on Reddit, buried under pages of noise, a thread. Does anyone else feel sick when they say the stories out loud? No one replied. But the post is still there. Waiting. The loops are getting louder. Psychologists in South Korea, the Netherlands, and New Jersey filed nearly identical cases in the last 3 years. Patients, unrelated, unaffiliated, telling the same 6-sentence fable. Over and over. In session. In sleep. In private notebooks. Their handwriting would change. Their accents would change. One woman spoke it in a dialect she didn't know. Then wept. Then laughed. Then refused to speak again. So the question remains. If stories are doors, what did you open when you told it? And if forgetting is the only escape, why does it get louder every time you try? You laughed when you said it. But it remembered you. And now it's waiting for the next time.